culture is understood in a variety of ways, but to experience it requires a perfect blend. This week on DV, Des explores the world of Cantonese opera. Holding a special place in the heart of Hong Kong's colourful history, it's been constantly adapting to generations of audiences. Journeying around town to discover the many efforts behind keeping this iconic Hong Kong cultural performance art alive, we are in for a treat. Let's start in Tsim Sha Tsui and check in with Des.
When it comes to live music, Hong Kong has a lot to offer. You have jazz clubs, you have canto pop concerts, and you have lots of visiting acts that come through the city every year. Now, if I were to say Cantonese opera, you'd say, wait, you can watch that live? Or at least it's not the first form of live entertainment you think of. But did you know that when it comes to live entertainment here in Hong Kong, Cantonese opera has the longest history? And thankfully for us, there's a bunch of enthusiasts who have taken this art form, have added new elements to it, and are trying not only to preserve it, but also promote it to a wider audience. Let's go learn more. Can you tell us about the key elements of Cantonese opera?
中國戲曲係一種特別嘅藝術，而且包含全國每個省份都有。而廣東省咧亦都有戲曲，所以我哋嘅戲曲咧同中國任何戲曲嘅分別都唔大嘅，都係一種係文化嘅薈萃。
Cantonese opera is an offshoot of Chinese opera, and Chinese opera is all-encompassing for the country, and it's in every province, every area. So although Cantonese opera has its own distinctive elements, it still shares a lot of the common elements of Chinese opera. Now, is there anything you can introduce about Cantonese opera? What are the things they should be looking out for?
我哋戲曲咧就歸納咗係叫做四功五法。四功咧就係唱、念、做、打。唱咧就係唱歌啦，念就係念白，念白好多種喎。做就我哋嘅做功，舉手投足啊。打就學好多嘅舞蹈形式嘅嘢。咁手眼身步法，呢個係四功五法。
Now, Gang said that to be a good Cantonese opera performer, you really need to master a lot of things. But the things there that are called 4 fundamentals and 5 methods, okay? So let's talk about 4 fundamentals first. The 4 fundamentals are singing, delivering the dialogue in a proper way, and then there's a general encompassing of doing the thing, and really that's emoting, being able to show your emotions, show the audience the emotions. And then of course the core element is the martial arts part of Cantonese opera. For those of you who've watched it before, there's a lot of very exciting movements and martial arts. And then we move on to the 5 methods. Now, I'm not going to go into each of the methods. I'll just say what the 5 methods are. It's your hands, your eyes, your body, your step, and then this more kind of intangible law or method that encompasses all of these things. Now, for someone who really wants to take more of an interest in Cantonese opera, get into it, maybe learn something before they go and watch it, what advice do you have for them?
首先咧，我要將粵劇嘅定位定喺一個邊個位置。全世界咁多嘅娛樂事業，點解要保存粵劇？因為佢又有地方性嘅色彩。同時，你睇粵劇係睇一啲古典嘅故事，要熟悉中國嘅詩詞歌賦，熟悉中國嘅歷史，我哋睇粵劇咧，先至越睇越有味道。如果你唔識嘅話，冇涉獵嘅話，咁樣你咧去睇粵劇咧，你只不過係睇佢哋嘅化妝啊、服裝啊、一種唱啊。
So he said that if someone really wants to take Cantonese opera seriously, the first thing you need to do is to brush up on Chinese history. Because you would be missing a lot if you didn't understand Chinese history, because you wouldn't understand a lot of the stories or the themes behind these performances. Then if you go, you would really just be kind of absorbing the makeup and the action and the music, which isn't bad, but you would be missing a large part of the story. Christine, my first question to you is there are lots of nuances when it comes to Cantonese opera. What are the hardest things about it? Is it the macro things, understanding the story or the history, or is it the micro things like the hand movements or where you're supposed to stand?
I think it's absolutely the small things that matters the most. These movements, it takes a lot of time to practice and to master.
Give us an example of that.
When we learn our movements, we might have some very generalized concept of it, or it's actually like the most basic forms we know about it.
Yep.
But then you figure out, like especially when you look at Peking opera as well, or other types of performing arts around in China, you suddenly figure out it's not that basic. It's not only one standard.
As I understand it, traditional Cantonese opera, the sets are relatively simple, is that right? Because I know for this show you guys do have a more stylized background with an LED wall and stuff.
That's a very main point of our art form. Over the years, we have more and more backdrops, and nowadays, especially for example in this show, we use the LED back wall, so it gives people more sense of like modernized theater.
The seating that we see downstairs, the table with the two chairs, that also has something to do with your art form, is that right?
Yes, I think the concept is from these traditional, like not much backdrop kind of setting. So we always say that one table and two chairs, it represents everything. How we put it on stage, it could represent a bridge, it could represent a mountain, it could represent a castle. That's how this one table, two chairs thing came from.
I want to dig a little bit deeper into the technical skills now. You hear so much about the hand movements, the hand gestures.
A lot of our movements are kind of, this distinguishes the character. So basically, first, the most basic is the male character and the female character.
Okay.
So for female characters, we have a more dainty, like we have to show the more dainty side of these characters. So their hands are probably like that.
Okay, let me see if I can get this right. So a middle finger and thumb.
And you have to put power and energy into your fingertips as well.
Okay. It's weird because you tell me to put power, but then I have to, these look pretty relaxed.
It looks relaxed, but actually you could feel it. And for palms, it's like that.
Now, what's palms mean?
This is the female way of how they put their.
I don't even think I can do that physically, Christy.
You have to push your
trouble.
thumb like in the middle here. Yeah. So yeah, around that. For male characters, maybe like more people who have some martial art skills. For like example, warriors or like generals, war generals. We have this sword finger.
Ooh, sword finger.
Yes. So we have to put even more energy because we're kind of a more stiff character. So that's. Yeah. So we still have to have a little curve. Yeah. So that's why we have to still warm right for that.
Is it common in the storylines for a female to be playing the male role? When would the male play the male role, and then when would they have a female play the male role?
This actually depends on each production. There are a lot of like these traditional taboos in Chinese culture, so that some gods can only be played by real male actors.
Oh.
Yes. So other than that, you could choose according to yourself or the producer or the director.
Okay, so it's not dependent on the storyline.
Not really.
Unless there was, like you said, mentioned that God exception.
Yeah.
So traditionally, as I understand it, there are 4 main roles in Cantonese opera. Tell us about those.
Sure. So the way we categorize all these kind of different characters, we categorize them into 4 main roles. So it's the female character, the male character, the character with painted faces, and the comical character. The painted faces, of course, we all have painted faces on stage. You see these kind of painted faces with more colors instead of only the main white, red, and black. These are categorized into the painted faces characters. Mostly because of the storyline and the liking of the audience, only the male characters and the female characters are seen as the main cast.
Yep.
For Cantonese opera in Hong Kong, most people only see the male and female characters as the main characters, but that's a little unfair actually. It's based on the storyline and so on. Yes, the 4th one is the characters with doing comical relief. So we sometimes categorize as the Joker.
Oh, sure. So that's just like the jester in European theater.
Yes.
There's an interesting term that I certainly would like to know more about. And is this fan chun? What does that mean? Because that's a term, again, that you would often hear when talking about Cantonese opera.
So basically that is a male actor acting as a female character on stage, or a female actress acting as a male character on stage. For example, I'm a female actress, but I only act as male roles on stage. So that's what we call fan chun.
Well, thank you so much. I learned so much. It's absolutely fascinating what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are back and in Wan Chai to continue our conversation about Cantonese opera. Des?
Traditionally, Cantonese opera was passed on from one generation to the next in a, for lack of better term, unstructured way. People didn't go to school for Cantonese opera. If you wanted to learn it, you join a troupe, and then you go into sponge mode and you try and absorb as much knowledge and skills from the seniors and sifus as possible. Well, times have changed, and nowadays, there's a more formalized and maybe even academic way of teaching and learning this stuff. So next, we're going to talk to some teachers and students who are doing it. Professor Lau, can you start off by telling us about the curriculum and offerings here?
Well, our institution here actually has a variety of programs that cater to all ages. We have a focus on Cantonese opera specifically. We have a 4-year Bachelor of Fine Arts program, which is the only program in the world that specifically deals with Cantonese opera as a discipline. We also have Diploma and Foundations program, which for students that may not meet the academic threshold of a bachelor's degree, we can help them out with that program to get to an appropriate academic threshold. We will also be opening a professional diploma program, which is specifically tailored for practitioners and help them upskill and give them a broader understanding of Cantonese opera in the context of the world. And we also have a variety of continuing education courses, as well as we also just started a Cantonese opera youth program targeting youth from 9 to 17 years old.
Okay, so the people who are coming come from various ages and academic backgrounds. Some have degrees, some don't.
Yes, most definitely. A lot of times we have kids that really enjoy Cantonese opera when they're young. And they learn, and then they get to an age where academically they want to do other things, which is fine. So we've actually had students that have master's degrees that come to our institution. We've also had students with a law degree, practicing lawyer, come to our institution. In the past, we've also had a student from Boston. So he was American. He thought he really enjoyed Cantonese opera, and he did a lot of research, and he realized this was the only place in the world that actually offers such a unique program. So he actually came from Boston to learn more about the art form.
So from your experience, what do most people do after they're finished?
Well, here's the thing. We actually have a program in our BFA that actually has a major in performance and a major in music.
Okay.
So Cantonese opera music is an accompaniment that, works alongside of the performance that you normally think of when you think of Cantonese opera. And so a lot of our students, when they graduate from our institution, go out and work as practitioners. Aside from working as practitioners, of course, a lot of them do go into teaching, and a lot of them, they build interest. And when they have an interest, aside from being just practitioners and also being teachers, they also become the new audience. They also become the new group of people that gives that the vibrant energy that actually is the core of what we're trying to do here.
Professor, what is the significance and why is it important to offer Cantonese opera here?
Cantonese opera itself is very significant. UNESCO actually has Cantonese opera on its representative list of intangible cultural heritage items. And the reason for it is because of its impact historically and culturally within the region. And therefore, Cantonese opera, in that sense, has a significance that's beyond what we just practice on stage. Cantonese opera is an identity. It's an identity of Cantonese language. It's an identity of Hong Kong. It's an identity of the Greater Bay Area. So it's very, very significant in that sense that we need to curate this art form and pass it on from generation to generation.
What do you hope is the future for Cantonese opera?
Well, as we talked about passing from generation to generation, kind of segue into that, I'm actually a second-generation Cantonese opera practitioner.
Oh.
So I think for me personally, there's a lot of vested interest in the fact that this is something I grew up with. So in that sense, if I'm looking at what the hopes and aspirations of Cantonese opera moving in the future, it's really about telling that story. It's about telling that story of how do we go from one generation to the next? What are we passing along from one generation to the next? And having that connection. So if anything, the most important thing and hope and aspiration is that I hope in the distant future, when I'm long gone, that my kids and their kids and their kids will still have an opportunity to really enjoy and understand this very unique art form.
Tanya, I want to ask you about your Cantonese opera journey. How do you get into this and why?
First of all, I want to thank my mom. She is a doctor, and she wanted me to have well-rounded development. So she chose this interest class for me. And now I'm the instructor of this organization. And I was one of the graduates from the first class of this organization.
Wow, things are kind of coming full circle for you. From your experience, what has been the hardest thing about teaching kids? Is it the technical aspects, the physicality, their mental state? What is it?
No, it's what I taught this week. They totally forget the next week.
Okay.
That's the most difficult thing for me. And we also have a group that we will send message to the parents what we teach today, and next week what we need students to practice or prepare for next class. Yeah, that's what we need to do, because the children nowadays, they have too much hobbies, they have too much classes, they are very busy.
Abigail and Theo, I'm so happy to meet you guys. You know why? Because these days I meet so many kids who are into video games, they like to play computers, but you guys have decided to do Cantonese opera. I want to ask you guys how you got into this and how long have you guys been doing it? Let's start with that. Abigail, you first.
I first got into this when I was 4 years old. My grandma invited me to watch one Cantonese opera show, and I really enjoyed it because I thought their clothes and all the hairstyles were really, really pretty. So then I found this organization that would teach me it. So then I've been learning it for about 6 years now.
Wow, 6 years. Okay. Theo, what about you?
When I was 4, my grandma always bring me to watch Cantonese opera, and I was really impressed with what the actors can do on stage.
When you tell your friends that I'm doing Cantonese opera, what's usually their reaction?
They're mostly surprised because it's a very old Chinese culture, and not many kids these days do it.
About performing in Cantonese opera, and what is the most challenging thing about it?
My most favorite thing is we can pretend to fight, and I think it's really cool. And the most challenging thing is you have to some kind of stand up for the whole lesson, which is 3 hours, and it's really tiring.
You have to stand for 3 hours?
I really like doing Chinese opera because you can do all sorts of different things. Like you can sing, you can do different, it's like dancing, but you can also do flips and stuff.
And what's the hardest thing about it?
Probably singing, because you have to sing you have to sing really high. It's kind of challenging for me, but I've done it for so long now, so I've adapted to it.
Do you guys get nervous before a performance?
Yeah.
Yeah? And what do you do to kind of overcome those nerves?
We would talk to each other and practice more.
Now, both of you guys have siblings?
Yeah.
Are they doing this stuff?
Yeah?
Yeah.
And so you guys, do you teach them, or are they more advanced than you? Do you guys practice at home together and run around and go like around the house?
Yes.
No.
No?
No, my sister's really shy. My sister's really shy. She won't even sing in front of me normally.
But she
I have
performs.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to ask you, do you learn stuff in this art that you don't learn in school? Can you tell me more about that?
A lot. Like music, at school you won't get to sing these songs. You sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and stuff. Maybe the moves, in PE class you just do running or basketball. You won't get to do flips and stuff. And it's a lot more fun here because there's so many people with you too.
What have you learned from this experience?
I learned about the Chinese culture and what people wear in the ancient times.
Now, apart from practicing here in the studio, I would imagine you guys would need to do some practicing at home too, whether it's the moves or putting on makeup or putting on the costumes. Anything you want to share about that, Theo?
There's 2 times after my sisters perform, they really enjoy performing. So they want to perform in the house to daddy and mommy. I help them face paint the Cantonese opera.
Their makeup. You put the makeup on.
Yeah, put the makeup on them. They really enjoy performing.
Now, when you
To my
perform,
dad.
before a performance, do you put on your own makeup or does someone put it on for you?
Someone put it on for me.
So how do you know how to put it on your sisters? Or you just kind of copied what's
Kind of copy what they did.
How did it turn out?
Really disgusting.
Okay, but mom and dad enjoyed the performance anyway. Before doing this episode today, I always thought that Cantonese opera was dying, or at least on its way out. But now I realize that there is a younger generation who's interested in it. Now, I'm not saying every kid in Hong Kong aspires to become the next Cantonese opera star. And even for those who are doing it or taking lessons, very few will go on to become a Christy or a Ga Yin Gao. But that's okay because there's still true value in what they do. And that's helping keep the art form alive and hopefully inspiring others to do it.